In this video, we're going to be taking a look at using CorelDRAW and EasyStone to create a design that's quite similar to this. Now, someone had posted this design and apparently it looked high and low for the design file itself and was unsuccessful. And so we want to go about recreating a design that's similar in style. Now, it won't be exactly the same, but it will be quite similar. And oftentimes we'll find a design that we like that's not available as an existing download file, or more that to the case usually happens, we find a design that we like, but it's not in the right size. And this particular design, they wanted it specifically for a child's shirt. And so a lot of the designs you'll find are available for adult sizes and not for child sizes. And this is a really simple design anyhow, so it'll be easy for us to go about creating it. If we understand some basic CorelDRAW functionality, and of course we understand how to work some of these tools here inside EasyStone. So, of course, the first question that we always ask is what size should the overall design be? And in this case, I want it for a child shirt, so no wider than 6 inches. So we'll come here to the Specialty tab at EasyStone and choose Set Size, and we'll begin there. We'll click on the left and then the right, and then we'll set that to be 6 inches wide. So when we know now when we go about designing it, the overall width of the design will be 6 inches. So the first thing we want to do is create the vector part of the design, which is the N. So let's go ahead and do that. So what we want to do is switch over to our text tool and we'll choose N. Now I get in the habit of using EasyStone, although of course we could use the text tools here in CorelDRAW as well. So I just open up my font manager and I know what the font I want for this one, and it's this collegiate black. So I just type in a few letters in the font name and it'll show me all the fonts that have black in it, for example. And there we go. So now we can kind of just position this roughly over the existing design. So you can see the existing design, that it's stretched a bit. So we want to just stretch it out a little bit like so. Okay. So then we'll just set that aside. So that's kind of step one. And now what we need to do is we need to hollow out this middle portion. But before we do that, I want to find out how much we need to hollow out that middle portion. And so we have a font here. Let's go ahead and switch over to our font tool, our text tool here in CorelDRAW, and let's just type out what we want. And we have a font that is very similar in style to Huskers. And so what I want to do is come over here and we'll switch over to Rhinestone fonts. And this one has Mini in it, Athletic Mini. So you can see here, there's the Athletic Mini font. Now I actually want to switch over to the other style, so I'm going to choose the toggle case. And so you can see it's quite similar to this particular one. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised that whoever originally designed this didn't use, because if you look here, if you look at, let's change the color here. If you look at the number of stones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. In fact, yeah, it looks like they probably actually used our font because it's basically identical. You could see it's quite similar. So what we want to do, I don't know what the original size of this design was, but I do know that the request was for a 6-inch wide overall design. So what I don't know are these to be SS10s or 6s. For the word Huskers. So I'm just going to set them to 10s using the resize font function first. And yes, it looks like 10s will fit in there quite nicely. Now we're going to space this wording apart a little bit, but you can see how it lines up with the original. So this gives me some inkling. You can see it's about 1 inch tall. It gives me some inkling of how tall this should be. So what I'm going to do then is go ahead and create this cutout for our letter N here. So let's go ahead and just move that aside for a moment. And the way I'm going to go about doing it is I'm just going to create a large oval, something like this. And then I'm just going to make a duplicate. Now, how far down? How far down do we want it to be? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a duplicate of this oval just by hitting the plus key on my keyboard. And then if I have nothing selected, we have a nudge option here. Now, this text is roughly an inch tall. So I'm going to, and we have to think about, we need a space. First of all, we need a row of stones, a space between the text, and then we need a space of our end. So I'm thinking total, what we're going to do is total, let's nudge it 2 inches. Let's just try that. Sometimes we have to try one value, and then we might find that we need a different value. So let's try 2 inches. So we just you make one selection. Actually, we have nothing selected, and we set our nudge value, which is 2 inches. And then we'll go ahead and nudge it. And so this space is now become 2 inches. All right. So then from there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Smart Fill tool and create a new shape based on that opening. And that is what I would ultimately wind up using to cut my end. So I'm going to select my shape and hold my shift key in my N and hit C and E. And that will kind of line everything up vertically, centered, and horizontally. But I'm going to manually adjust this down a little bit. And now I'm going to go about cutting the hole in my N. So if we look at the original, it's quite similar. Let's cut the hole in the N. So now you can see we have cut that hole, which we need. And now what we're going to do is we're going to offset. So again, we're going to use our contour tool. And how much do we want to offset? Well, I'm just going to kind of do this by eye. So I'm just going to say, let's offset that much. All right. Then we'll go ahead and break this apart. And then we'll try to add some stones here and just see what they look like. So we're going to do right click for SS10 size, right click for crystal, and then hit add stones. And what we want to do is we just want to look at the distance between the top of the stone and our end. So what that tells me is I really offset this too far. So I should be able to just double click on this and pull it back up a little bit. So it doesn't have quite as much offset. Right click, break apart. Let's add some stones again. And yeah, I like that distance. I think that'll work out okay. All right, so now we have that. And really, like I said, I'm just really doing this by eye. So we have that. So then the next thing we want to do is let's go ahead and contour again. And again, we're just eyeballing it. And this is the space that I want to fit my text into. So we'll go ahead and we'll break it apart here. So this is my text, okay? So now we have this Huskers text that we want to put on there. Let's see what that looks like. But before we do that, we don't need this completely controlled path. You know, I might, as long as we're learning, maybe I'll go ahead and leave the completely enclosed path just to show you. Because really for this particular example, honestly, it doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and type out the word Huskers. We're going to use the Athletic Mini font again. We do need to toggle that case. All right. So the first thing I need to do is I need to apply the text to our path in order to get the curvature of this text. So we just select Huskers, shift select our path, and choose the text to path option. Now you can see that Huskers is upside down. So that's kind of problematic. So what we need to do is not have it upside down. And you can also see something that's going to happen here. Now, I don't know if the word Huskers is the right size yet. So we do need to flip it around. And we have some tools here next to text to path. You see vertical, horizontal. When we select our text, by default, the path gets selected with it. To illustrate the point, if we go into the object manager here, you might see this a bit more clearly. So we'll come over here to your Dockers and we'll choose object manager here. And if you don't see anything, just double click. It's a little CorelDRAW bug. Just double click on it and double click on it again. And that will kind of reset it. But if you look here, we have the curve and the text that's been applied to the curve. All right. So if we click once, we get the curve and the text. But if we click on the text a second time, now you can see we're just modifying the text. And then we want to flip it vertically and horizontally. Okay, so now you can kind of see what's happened. Now the text is on top, and it's a bit difficult to see, but there is this little control handle. We're just going to drag it down here so that, well, we could drag it down to the bottom. That's fine. But then we probably need to flip it vertically and horizontally again. All right, so now you can kind of see it's in the middle there. Now, what we don't know is we don't know how big this text is. Right now, if you look at the original, the spacing between that line, and there's a little bit of space between the text and the line and so forth. Right now, it's quite large. This text, I do know, needs to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to select just our text and scale it up. But I don't know how much just yet. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and select just our text and choose the resize font option. Now what we're looking for is we want to see how much this text changes in size. So watch it. See if it changes in size. It'll either get bigger or smaller. So let's click on resize font, and you can see it just barely got smaller. So we did pretty good just by eye. So now we kind of have to back up a little bit. And this, to me, seems like the easiest way to do it. The amount of distance between the top of our text and the bottom of our text is too much. Now, if we remember when we did this offset here, we did this offset of 2 inches, and then we cut a hole in our text. Well, that's too big. So with nothing selected, I'm going to say, I'm going to take away 1/2 of an inch. Let's just see what happens. So we're going to take away 1/2 an inch. Our nudge distance is 1/2 inch, and we're going to take this and nudge it up 1/2 inch. We're going to go ahead and use our Smart Fill tool again. We're going to bring this over here. We're going to do a contour. We don't know how much of a contour. We're just kind of eyeballing it. We're going to break it apart. And then we know right at the edge of this would be our N. So what we want to do is we'll go ahead and add stones to this. And look at that distance from this to the start of our N. That's about what we want. So we know that's going to work out okay. So let's go ahead and type out our text again. So there's Huskers Athletic Mini. We're going to toggle it. We are going to apply it to our path. We are then going to select our text, and we're going to make it much larger. First of all, we're going to move it to the bottom here, and we're going to make our text bigger. We know we need to make our text larger. And there's a little control handle here where we can move this up. Now let's just fill in this space that we have here. And that looks pretty good. There's this little control handle. It's tough to see, but we'll select just our text and then resize our font. Now again, what we're looking for, does the text get bigger or smaller? And it got slightly larger. All right, so now this is telling us something. And as we do more and more design work, these are little numbers that we could just kind of keep in my head. So if you could see, this stone is the right size. If we add stones to our path, now you can see it's a little bit tight. So down here it's okay, but up here it's a little bit tight. So this isn't going to work either. So where is there a happy medium? We did 2, we did 1.5. So now we're going to do a 1 3/4. Okay, so that may be entirely confusing. I think even I'm confused a little bit. But let's go ahead and just nudge it back down 1/4 of an inch. So now the spacing between the top of this and the top of this is 1 3/4 inches. Again, we'll go ahead and create our fill object there. We'll grab another N, and now I think we're ready to go ahead and finish it up. All right, so we did a little bit of prep work in finding out exactly what the proper dimension was. My first guess wasn't that good. Select our green shape, shift key our N, CE. That centers it up. All right. And then we need to do our offset. So again, this first part I'm just going to do by eye. I'm going to right click and test it out, make sure that's what I want. And that is what I want. You can see they have a nice little space between the two. So that works for me. So I'm going to undo that. And now we're going to go ahead and put in our Huskers text. So there's Huskers. And we're going to switch it over, toggle case. We are going to make it bigger, roughly the size of the finished size. We then need to apply it to our shape with our text to path. And then I'm going to switch over to wireframe mode. See if can you see this little control handle here? It's a little red control handle. And all we need to do is just kind of drag it around and down of where we want it here. And as we drag it, see that vertical line that appears? That's the center point of our text. And then I'm just going to nudge this up a little bit. Something, maybe pull it down just a smidge. Make sure that we're still roughly center. Let's go back over here. We're a little bit high on our Huskers, and the text itself is probably a little bit big. So I know I'm going to scale it down just a pinch here. So we scale it down just a pinch. That's going to get us a little bit closer. I'm going to pull it in here, just pull it down a little bit. Just a little bit. I'm quite particular, and we can fine tune that here in just a little bit. We're pretty darn close. Now, in the original, you can see how far the text overlapped, and I don't think these stones along the bottom went far enough. I think it would look better if they kind of came out farther. So what we're going to do here in our version down here is I'm going to try and space these letters out a little bit. So remember, when we select it once, we get the curve and the text. If we select it again, we get just our text. And then I can switch over to my shape tool. Now, when I do that, I can actually change the spacing of my lettering. So you see, as I pull this icon over, see how the spacing between my letters gets bigger? So it's really a matter of personal preference what you want to do. You can see here some of the spacing, like between the K and the E and the R, looks pretty tight, but then this spacing on our S, maybe it doesn't look as like the space is just a little bit too much. Well, you have these little control handles where we can change the spacing of the individual letters. And you can actually do several letters at a time if you wanted to. So like here, I'll select that little control point and hold my shift key and select this one. And then you can see I can pull these two letters together. And because it's applied to a curve, that repositioning is going to be on that curve. So we can fine tune, we can make it look exactly, the spacing exactly like we want it to. So whatever you're comfortable with, just kind of do that part by eye. Sometimes I'll obsess over these tiny little things like that. Now, once I've adjusted the individual spacing between the letters the way I like it, I do need all of that lettering back to center. So we'll just select it again. And if I grab that control handle, then I can control this again. Now, the spacing between letters won't change, but let me go back over here. I want to make sure that Huskers, I need to see that vertical line up here. So as I pull it, see that vertical line up here? Well, then I know that that Huskers text is perfectly centered. So I'm just going to pull this down a little bit. Or pretty darn close to it. All right, so now we have it pretty much the way we want it. So now what we need to do, of course, is resize our text and watch. We should see that the text doesn't change much. So I'll go ahead and choose resize font. And does it get bigger or does it get smaller? And you can see it got slightly smaller, which for this case, because it was such a little amount that it changed, we're going to leave it just the way it is. It'll be fine. So now that we've done that, we can go ahead and delete our shape here. We actually need our shape to apply stones to it. So I kind of forgot where I was at. So yes, we need our shape to apply stones. And now you can see we have a little bit of space between our vector N and our stones, a little bit of space between Huskers and up here. So that all is going to work just perfectly. So I'm happy with all of that. Now what I want to do is make sure I'm going to just, I think I'm going to maybe move this down, this whole thing down just a little bit. I don't know how much, just a little bit like that. I'll be happy with that. All right, so now we can get our green shape. We need to trim out our N. So we just select our green shape here, hold the shift key, select our N, and then trim that out. And now we can dispose of our green shape because we don't need that anymore. So now you can kind of see what that looks like. Let's see here. We nudged it a little bit. Something was off a little bit. So let's try and do that again. Oops, wrong one. Green shape, shift key, trim, not weld. And now let's take a look at it. Yes. So now you can see we have a nice even spacing here, a nice even spacing here, and between our text and so on and so forth. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and select the entire design. These stones, these crystal stones on the outside of Huskers, those stones are set to a path. So we're going to delete our path. And then what we want to do is obviously the excess stones here we want to get rid of. So you can see kind of how that works if we just do it that way. And for now, let's see here. Actually, let's undo that. Let's just trim it back a little bit of ways so we can kind of get a feel for what's going on here. And we'll fix that to be exactly the way we want it to be momentarily. Now, the next thing we need to do, of course, is we need to outline our N in stones as well. So to do that, we're going to come here to the Stone Fill tab, and we can use this advanced offset option, or we could specify a value too, or we could just guess using our offset function here in CorelDRAW. We can just guess if I add stones to this. We can look at the distance between this stone here and the spacing between our N, and we could say, well, that's a little bit too much. So we can just go ahead and adjust this, make it inside a little bit, and then we can add stones again. And see exactly what we have there too. So let's go ahead and add stones again. And now you can see the distance here. That's mainly the main focus here is how far we are there. Let's try this again here. There we go. So now we left the vinyl version, and now we can see how far off we are there. So I'm happy with that option as well. But what we could do is we could come in here to the advanced offset options, and we can choose these different options. So for example, I might go from 10 to 16 and create the offset. We have to right click to create the offset though. So let's go back and do this advanced offset, 10 to 16, right click, and that will give us our outside offset. And you can see now if we add stones, we have that spacing that I was looking for to begin with. So there's a couple of different options. You can do it by eye, or we can let the automatic calculator here in EasyStone figure that out for us. So I'm going to delete this, and we'll kind of talk about what we're going to do here. For these crystal stones, temporarily, I'm going to give them a different color. So we're going to target those stones, and we're just going to temporarily just pick a random color. Let's go back into our advanced offset. We are going to do the 10 to 16 option, right click, and that will give us the offset that we're looking for. Now, when we go to apply stones, you can see here, this piece here has a path going down the bottom of it. Now, what I can do probably is come in here and select these two nodes, and we're going to choose band, which is break at nodes. And this path, we can now delete. So basically, we need to do the same thing over here, really, on all four sides. So down here, let's double click on this path. You can see that node. Just click on it, hold the shift key, and click on this one. And then we're going to choose band. We get this message box. Don't pay no attention to that. Just click OK. And now we can delete this path, because we no longer need that path going along the bottom. Now the rest of these paths we actually do need. Now this one here, we don't need that, so let's double click there. So there, shift key, click, ban, yes, and it goes ahead and does its function, so we can delete that path along the bottom there. Okay, so now we're ready to add stones to our outside. I do believe, yes, everything looks good. So we're going to double click. We'll just do the top portion here first. So you can see here we have all of this. So we're going to right click on our crystal color and we're going to hold down Alt AS. Over here on the stone tab, you see this detect corner option. That's grayed out, and honestly that shouldn't even be visible. So we moved it from here to just holding down the Alt key and clicking AS. And basically what that does is it will position a stone at every single corner. So these are individual sections, if you will, of stones. So that now that we have all that in place, now we can go ahead and delete our paths. So we'll delete our paths. And then obviously we have a little bit of cleanup work here. We don't need that stone. That looks good. And we don't need this one. So we'll leave that. Everything else looks good except these two stones are intersecting, which honestly I wouldn't sweat that. When we go to actually make our template, shouldn't really be an issue. And then we have these stones here. Now what I would do is I would copy these over and flip them. And then I would group them together. We can use Easy Stone for that. And from the left edge, because see, when we did that offset, it didn't put in these stones here. So there were a couple of stones it didn't put in that I think I want there. So we'll go ahead and delete this one and this one. And you can see because this is tight, we can't fit in another stone. So we won't be able to fit in another stone. But here, we can get rid of this stone. And we'll select this and hold the shift key and then hit select. That selects everything in between, and then we could space all those out vertically. And now you can see we had some overlapping stones, so that's why it looks like that. So we'll do that again. Select vertical. And I think I need to delete one more. Select vertical. So it's kind of tedious a little bit, but the end result, will look quite nice. So that takes care of the top portion of the design. So now what we can do is we can move on to the next part of it, which is our bottom part. So same thing, Alt AS, that will add in the bulk of our stones there. We can come in here and delete our stone paths. This, you can see, we can just move these down and make room for those stones, which I think that'll look just fine. Let's come over here, basically do the same thing. Hold your shift key, that will constrain the movement of that stone completely vertical. And then we'll move that one completely vertical, and if we really wanted to, we could right click on those stones and space them out evenly if you really wanted to get nitpicky. All right, so that takes care of that. We have a similar issue that we had up top where we had two overlapping stones. Not really going to be too concerned about that. And then we'll do the same thing, Alt AS, to add in a couple of stones here. And then we can come over, and I guess we'll add a stone like that. So we could delete our stone paths here. So let's do that. And I don't really exactly know how I want this to look, but I think I've got too much going on at this angle. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to delete a stone and do just like we did before. We'll just delete a few stones here. We select one stone, hold the shift key all the way down to the edge, hit S. That will select everything in between, and then if we right click on H, that will space stones at an angle evenly. So now you can see all those stones are spaced at an angle just exactly how they should be. And then, we ultimately have a decision to make exactly how we want this to look. Now, this is where we have some advanced functionality here in Easy Stone that, like I said, I'm from an architectural background. I went to school for architecture, and so these little things kind of bug me. is this stone right here bugs me. So we have some really nifty guideline tools where I can right click to create a horizontal guideline at the center of this stone, and I can select 2 stones and hit the guide at angle. And what I want to do is I want to move this stone to that intersection. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and right click on D, and that will space them evenly. Now, if I was really going to be nitpicky, I would make this an SS6 stone, and I might even make this one an SS6 stone and do it like that. And I'll leave it that way. The sad thing of it is that's the only SS6 stone throughout the entire design. So in all reality, we just need to let it go. Even though I'll stress over it when I sleep tonight, we just have to let it go. And that this gap isn't going to be perfect. But what we want to do then is we go ahead and reset the spacing here. So we'll go from this corner to this corner, select and right click to space at an angle there. And I just think that will look better for the finished product. All right, so now we have all that into place. So now I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this stone and this one and this one and this one and leave that extra space between those. I just think it looks better. So let's go ahead and right click on our guides. So now we need to pick up all of our black stones. So we'll target our black stones and hit select and switch those over to crystals. And then, yes, we can go ahead and target our blue stones. So we'll pick up our blue stones and put them to crystal. And then what we really need to do is we need to make some type of an adjustment. And what we're going to do, because we don't need all these stones going all the way across like that. So what I want to do is we could try just drawing a curve. Let's see here. This might work okay. From center to center, like so. That, I tell you what, I'm not going to do it that way. I'm going to be a little bit more exact here because we need to trim this off. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and with our selection tool here in CorelDRAW is I'm going to select these stones, this freehand selection tool. I'm going to generate a new path by deselecting one and selecting it again and then right clicking on D, and that will generate a new path for me. Now these stones are connected to this path at the moment, so I'm going to break stones to remove those stones from the path, and then I'm going to basically do the exact same thing at the bottom. So let's create a new path. We got to tell EasyStone where to begin the new path, so deselect and reselect. So it's going to start the path at the last selected object. Right click on D. That will generate a new path for us, and then I can break stones, and that will remove the stones from the path. And then I'm just going to draw a 2-point line wherever I want. So there's no right or wrong here, but I'm just going to draw it right here. Let's go with that right there, okay? So now I have that. So now what I need to do, though, is I need this line exactly the same location on the other side. So to do that, we're just going to select that line and hit the plus key. That makes a duplicate sitting right on top of one another. And then I'm going to hold my shift key and my N. Because this is basically symmetrical, you can see, but something happened. You see how it's not symmetrical? So that causes a problem. So to fix that, we're just going to make a bigger shape. I'm going to push it to the bottom, and I'm going to take, let's see here. What do I want to do here? I want to center. I'm trying to think here. Let's do this. Let's select everything except our shapes here. So we don't want to. Let's try that again. We're going to select everything, and now we're going to remove those two shapes from the selection. So you can see there. So how did we do that? Well, we selected everything. And now we're going to hold down the Alt key and the Shift key and swipe through these lines. And that will remove those lines from the selection. So those are just the kind of things we have to know about CorelDRAW in order to do. So now that we have that group, let's go ahead and group it together. And then let's take our shape, or just a new rectangle, and the group. So we're going to take our rectangle and shift page down. So we're going to take our shape and the design and hit C. So now we take this duplicate and our box and flip it over, and now you can see it's in the same perfect spot. Now you're going to have to rewind that through a couple of times probably to get it, but there's all these little ways around things, and that is how I go about handling different things like that. So we need it exactly the same, because it just has to be the same. Otherwise, it just won't look right in my eyes. So now that we have that the way we want it, let's go ahead, and basically what I need to do is I need to trim this line back to this one. So we have a function for that here in EasyStone. It kind of makes the process a little bit easier. So we're going to select that, and we're going to come in here to our editing tab, and we're going to mark that shape, and this is what we want to trim back. So we just hit trim. So let's see what it did here. Oh, pardon me. This is grouped. So we have to ungroup it, and we'll try that again. So we're going to mark it, and then this right here, we're going to trim. And then I can select that piece, and you can see it's trimmed. That path has now been trimmed back to there. So that's exactly what we needed it to do. So these extra stones, we can just get rid of those. Down here, same thing. We're going to select this. We're going to mark it. We're going to trim it. We're going to delete all the way back to the part where we trimmed. And then, of course, we can delete any excess stones we like. And, of course, we don't need this object anymore, so we can go ahead and delete that. And then we're going to come over here and basically repeat the process. So we're going to select this. We're going to mark it. We're going to select the path that we want to trim back, hit trim, and we can delete this. Same thing down here. We're going to go ahead and mark this one, trim all the way back to delete that path, and we could delete that. Okay, so now I know that this path has been extended exactly the same distance on both sides. So now I can sleep easy. But now what we need to do is we need to go ahead and resort our stones so that it takes up the full path. So to do that, we just select the path and right click. And yes, we'll go ahead and separate the existing. So it just basically will go through and reset. So now you can see that stone goes all the way to the edge of the path, all the way to the edge of the path. So we need to do the same thing here. Just select the path, and let's see here. Where did our macro go? Let's reopen that, and right-click on D. It says there's a blend group present, but now that has been extended. So now we can go ahead and delete these two things. Let's see, we'll delete that path, and let's go ahead and make this red. And just that quick, although it wasn't that quick, but there's a lot to it. But it really, if we weren't being so precise in exactly how we're creating this, we probably could have done it a lot quicker. We do need to check for any overlapping stone issues. So to do that, we'll hit check spacing. Takes care of all of our overlapping stones. And now we can go ahead and add a weed box. And we'll go ahead and copy this over. And we'll go ahead and we'll make a quick proof out of this. And what that will do is it will simulate our stones for us. It will calculate the number of stones being used. It'll add our dimensions of our design so we can actually get this set up. So there is the design. Now, I'm not sure what's happened here, why this weed box is being left behind, but we'll go ahead and get rid of that. And so now you can see that is basically the finished product. We're going to right click on our vector shape to get rid of the outline. And then I think I'm just for illustrative purposes, let's go ahead and fill that with red glitter. so you can see what that looks like. So now we can come in here and we'll go ahead and give it a name. So I'll use today's date, what it is. We'll do Huskers multi-deco. We are going to save the CorelDRAW file and export the proof. And now we're going to prep this for output for our design file. So we're going to select that design. We're going to choose our export vector file. And we only have the one stone, but we have vector and stone, so we only have the one stone size. So we don't have to do anything here. Easy Stone will automatically take care of the separations for us. So we just have to choose the file types that we want to save, which in this case I always save EPS and SVG. Export files. And this is what will be exported automatically for us. In fact, let's see here. I'm going to use a different version of Easy Stone. I've got too many versions installed here. So we're going to use a different version because that didn't export the way we needed it to. So I was using a pretty old version. So now we'll click on Export Vector File. And now we should see something different happen here. So when we choose Export Files, it says the file already exists, but we'll override it anyhow, and this is what we were looking for. So the vector has been separated from the stones, and it has a smaller weed box by default to make it easier when you go to weed this. So we'll go ahead and cut this out. And then, of course, you know when you're cutting HTV that this has to be mirrored when you're cutting heat transfer vinyl. But then we have our stone template as well, separate. So that's it in a nutshell. And I know that's a lot to kind of grasp and cover, but that's the advantage of these videos because you can rewind them as many times as necessary. And it gives you a better indication of the hard work that we have to go through. And of course, the know-how that we as a designer have to have. A lot of times people look at this design and say, well, that's a really easy, simple design. And yes, it is, but it still can be a little bit time consuming to actually go about creating it. So at any rate, that's the process. And hopefully this video will help you learn a few different techniques of how we go about handling certain logos. Thanks for watching.